Number 10. Bearded Avengers? In Marvel's what? Huh? We enter an alternate universe where every member of the Avengers has a beard, including the female members. Some of these beards are inexplicable, appearing to grow on Spider-Man's mask or on the Thing's rocky jawline. Honestly though, Captain America and the Hulk rock the look pretty well. This version of the Avengers is more bizarre than dark, but we felt they were definitely worth a mention. Number 9. Dead Avengers. In Deadpool Killustrated from 2013, the Merc with the Mouth comes to the realization that he and all these other costume crusaders are trapped in a repeating cycle of death and rebirth because they're all fictional characters. The only solution? Kill everyone. This issue is a sequel to Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe, and you can probably imagine where I'm going with this. Deadpool travels to the Ideaverse to kill certain characters and prevent spin-offs from ever being made, facing off against some classic literature characters like Moby Dick and Sherlock Holmes. At one point in the story, there's a flashback where we see the Avengers, but only appearing as corpses. Number 8. Captain America Corps. If you can't get enough Cap, this is definitely the storyline for you. This series, published in 2011, showcases an all-star lineup of Captain America variants. Branded enemies of the state, these heroes sport classic red, white, and blue and take on the Americommand in a story that is as all-American as baseball and homemade apple pie. Number 7. Avengers Unity Division. In Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe Again, published in 2017, we meet Avengers Unity Squad. Consisting of Rogue, Quicksilver, Deadpool, and others, they head to AIM Island, headquarters of Advanced Idea Mechanics, while investigating the killings of several superheroes. They arrive in search of MODOK Superior, believing he has the intel that they need. Deadpool advances during the fight to finish him off, but before he does, MODOK speaks some code words and triggers programming in Deadpool's brain that causes him to see his teammates as fun, colorful enemies. And then he kills them all. Another very dark, very dead version of the Avengers. Number 6. Avengers Initiative. In Uncanny Avengers Ultron Forever from 2015, we see Black Widow form the Avengers Initiative after Zero Day, during which Thanos invaded and killed about half of Earth's heroes. The heroes who remained make up this gritty version of the Avengers, including a version of Thor that wields a giant axe. This version of the Avengers goes on to kill Thanos using combined magic and science to finish him once and for all.
Number 5. Super Soldier. When it comes to Amalgam universes and characters, you've got choices, but we're gonna go with the original, the classic that fused characters from DC and Marvel together, and the imprint was actually called Amalgam Comics. They made a little one for a year to publish these. This happened after a series of lead-up versus fights. The characters would find themselves smooshed together. One of these fusions was Super Soldier, the combination of Superman and Captain America. The name's a bit on the nose, what's he gonna do? This character debuted in 1996. Again, as I said in my Batman crossovers vid, the 90s loved a good crossover. So here in this universe, the Super Soldier serum was derived from DNA taken from a dead alien, because why not? What else are you gonna do with a dead alien? They gave this formula along with solar radiation to a young Clark Kent, who then developed abilities because of it and became a super soldier. So there's not much Steve Rogers in the name, but there's some in the backstory. Not all fusions are seamless. It's an odd world when you fuse better years later with Doctor Strange. But this fusion is iconic, and it's a symbol of more cordial times between the American Big Two. Number 4. Mainframe from the MC2. The MC2 is a fondly remembered alternate universe wherein the boom of superheroes happened 15 years before it actually did in the Marvel 616 universe. So kind of like creating a golden age for Marvel so that they could have legacy characters, because that's what this comic focused on, the next generation of characters, something that DC already specialized in at that time. You see how companies feel about legacy characters is always changing and shifting. Sometimes they're great and sometimes they're awful. Mainframe is the MC2 version of Vision. He is an android patterned off the brain patterns of Gregory Stark. So he has the backstory of Ultron and Age of Avengers. Mainframe is able to manifest in Iron Man's armor and hop from suit to suit, and also to satellite. He tried to make himself the de facto leader of the Avengers right out the gate. The Avengers at first were not aware that he was an AI, but when they found out, they actually still remained his friend and helped him out with all the stuff that he needed, because being nice to AIs means that they don't go crazy and take over the world. Life lesson. Number 3. Capwolf. Yes, I'm serious, Capwolf. Wolf is a bit of a joke. In fact, the arc that he first debuts in is meant to be a slight tongue-in-cheek reference parody of another story arc that was going on, but that fell flat, not only for modern readers, but for readers at the time. In fact, it had to be explained, and that's never a good sign. Cap Wolf is what it sounds like. Captain America as a werewolf. And as silly as it is, it's also awesome. And it would be reused years later whenever they need to do like a creature feature. We need Frankencastle, we need Cap Wolf, we need somebody to be a vampire, we got choices. Something about a wolf parading around in Cap's costume with his shield is just, it's fun. It's a fun time. Especially if you just want to go with it. So if you like just going with it, this alternate version may be for you. Number 2, Weapon Hex. Here we meet another fusion character, this one from Warp World, which we've talked about many times on this channel, but if you're new here, here are the cliff notes. Gamora, wielding the Infinity Gauntlet, took the souls from the Marvel Universe, put them inside the Soul Gem, and then folded it in half so that all of those souls were then fused together. This created a fusion of X-23, Laura Kinney, and the Scarlet Witch, Wanda Maximoff. Here we're looking at a baby being born through experimentation to be the ultimate weapon, but this time instead of it being through science, we're looking at being through magic and the occult, which of course means there was also some prophecy involved. The result? A really cool fusion, where you've got hex lines all over her body, etc. Think that arc in Teen Titans, the animated series from 2003, where she had like the markings. It's a cool look. And it works surprisingly well as a backstory combo too. See? Magic and science. Thor was right. We found a world where they're one and the same. And number 1, Black Widow from the MCU. We're going to talk about Black Widow for our number 1, but really some would substitute many of the other characters in the MCU for this spot. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has become so large at this point that it just has its own fans and its own continuity that can operate, and for some does operate, entirely independently of comic canon, which is both a good and a bad thing, just like all things. For some, it made the characters more accessible and relatable. This is due to many's preference for a purely visual medium, because comics is also partially visual but also textural. There's, you know, layers. Black Widow emerged for some as a fan favorite. This was because they felt she was fully fleshed out, integral, and had many stories to tell. Some felt that she was underused, as was her potential in this universe. For some, the combination of medium and portrayal made her cooler than the original comic book version. As always, mileage varies, and some will prefer the MCU, some will prefer the comics, and some will enjoy both, or not like both.
Number 10, Quasar. Wendell Vaughn was once a run-of-the-mill SHIELD agent who was placed in charge of guarding the quantum bands until one fateful day that changed his life forever. One day, AIM androids were sent to steal the bands, and William Wesley had unfortunately passed away just an hour before, so in order to protect them, Wendell put them on himself, and thanks to his lack of killer instincts, he was able to not only control the power of the bands, but also defeat the AIM androids. Now, if you're not familiar with the power of the quantum bands, let me give you a bit of a rundown. The quantum bands draw quantum energy from the universe, and specifically it taps into the quantum zone. With this, Quasar is capable of controlling all forms of energy. Now, similar to DC's Green Lantern, he can also use energy to create force fields, armor, and weapons, as well as fly, teleport into the quantum zone, and communicate via radio waves. As a longtime fan of the Avengers, Quasar was honored when Captain America personally invited him to join the team, and as a part of the team, he would go on to fight with them in the Kree/Shi'ar war. Unfortunately, Quasar's duties as the protector of the universe would limit his involvement thereafter though. Check him out in his first appearance as Marvel Boy in 1978's Captain America number 217. Number 9. Mockingbird. Born and raised in San Diego, Barbara Bobby Morse was first introduced as a highly trained SHIELD agent and sidekick of Quasar. However, it wasn't until much later in the Marvel team-up series that Morse began using the Mockingbird alias. Now, she doesn't actually possess any superpowers, however, thanks to being injected by a formula, she was bestowed super strength, enhanced agility, and a regenerative healing factor. Couple all that with her extensive training in both hand-to-hand combat and weaponry, and that is a recipe for a valuable member of the Avengers. Now, after eloping with Hawkeye, the two were notified of the formation of the West Coast Avengers, and several Avengers, including Mockingbird herself, left to join the new squad, and her and Hawkeye served as this cute little motivating force for the team. Skip ahead a bit and we see Hawkeye and Mockingbird train the new Great Lakes Avengers, and then during the wake of the Avengers receiving a United Nations charter, both active teams were actually revamped, and Bobby received only one vote to become an active member of the Great Lakes Avengers, and ended up going back to the West Coast Avengers. Obviously, there's a whole lot more to her story, so feel free to check it out for yourself, starting with her first appearance as Mockingbird in 1980's Marvel team-up, number 95. Number 8. Spectrum. Born and raised in New Orleans, Monica Rambeau gained her powers one day while working for the New Orleans Harbor Police when she was exposed and bombarded by extra-dimensional energy. Now classified as an alpha-level threat, she uses her newfound energy form to create energy blasts, alter her appearance, fly, and just a whole lot more. Given the name Captain Marvel by the media, she became friends with many superpowered folks early on and actually served as an Avenger for a period of time, becoming its leader at one point. However, she was forced to step down from the group after way too many injuries. Out of respect for Genus Vel, the son of the original Captain Marvel, she changed her name to Photon so that he could take up the mantle and carry on his father's legacy. Fast forward a little bit past her time with the Mighty Avengers, we see Monica, now known as Spectrum, join the newly formed Ultimates. However, after the second superhuman civil war, the team was disbanded by the government because of the way they dealt with conflict. They did later reassemble to investigate Eternity at the request of Galactus, and eventually the team was combined into Alpha Flight, and they are working to keep people safe to this very day. Now if you want to know more about Monica's origin story, check her out in her first appearance in 1982's Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 16. Number 7. Wonder Man. One of the Avengers' more troubled team members, the ionic energy-powered superhero Simon Williams, has a long history with the Avengers that goes all the way back to his debut. Now Simon inherited his father's company Williams Innovations and ended up running it straight into the ground with the help of competition from Stark Industries. He was then later arrested for embezzling funds from the company, giving him a bitter hatred for Iron Man that was then leveraged by the supervillain Baron Zemo as a plot against the Avengers. After being given powers by Zemo, however, Simon betrays him and chooses to fight alongside the team he once fought against. The exact nature of his powers isn't always clear, but regardless, this energy gives his body a massive power up beyond the capabilities of normal humans, one of the powers being, of course, super strength. Wonder Man's strength is said to be on par with Thor and even possibly Sentry, as one time he literally knocked out Thor with just one punch, and this is a result of the experiments by Zemo. Wonder Man is also imbued with ionic energy, giving him super stamina, speed, agility, and then flight and reflexes, as well as making him pretty much indestructible. Wonder Man can also absorb various forms of energy, including antimatter, is able to project powerful energy blasts at will, and can even exist as pure energy if he wants to. Perhaps the biggest quirk of his abilities, however, is that he doesn't actually require any food, water, or even oxygen to survive, all thanks to his vast reserves of energy. Check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1964's Avengers number 9. Number 6. Crystal. The first Inhuman to appear on this list today, Crystal is a part of the royal family of Attilan and was subjected to the Terrigen Mist when she was very young, which gave her some pretty cool mental powers. Put simply, she's just basically the Avatar. She has control over the 4 elements, fire, water, earth, and air, which is done through psionic interactions with the substance on an atomic level. However, these 4 elements aren't where her control ends, because she also is capable of electrokinesis, magnetokinesis, thermokinesis, and cryokinesis. During her tenure with the Avengers, taking place during the Operation Galactic Storm, she developed an attraction with teammate Dane Whitman, the Black Knight. This relationship was a bit complicated as Pietro was trying to fix their marriage, and the available and aggressive Cersei pursuing Dane at the time as well. Crystal recommitted to Pietro when he returned to the Avengers, and Dane and Cersei were soon transported to another universe, ending their thoughts of an affair completely. Crystal was among the Avengers who seemingly sacrificed themselves to end the menace called Onslaught. Actually transported to a different reality created by Franklin Richards, Crystal was restored when the heroes returned. When the heroes who were believed to be dead returned to Earth, Crystal and Quicksilver were quickly reunited and both helped the Avengers reassemble. Crystal, however, returned to Attilan where she remained beside the royal family, raising Luna. Check out her story for yourself, starting with 1965's Fantastic Four, number 45.
Moving on to number 5, Iron Maniac from Earth 5012. Okay, sure, we are looking at an Iron Man here who is technically a little off his rocker. Anthony Stark of Earth 5012, who calls himself Iron Maniac due to him believing that he is, I quote, the sole survivor of a sane world living in a backwards insane world, is from an alternate timeline where most Avengers members had been slain by the alien Titanus. During this period, Reed Richards became power hungry and turned his back on the remaining heroes, and Stark ended up being scarred by an attack from the Human Torch. Essentially, he turns into a Victor Von Doom-esque character, setting up his base in Latveria in order to take over the world and save it from Richards. Compared to the original Tony, his body contains additional cybernetic enhancements, and he has developed a technology called power dampeners, which, in his timeline, he uses to counteract the Fantastic Four's powers. Nifty. Moving on to number 4, Weapon Hex. Weapon Hex is the product of the Infinity War storyline in which multiple characters were merged together. More on that later. Weapon Hex is an amalgamation of Scarlet Witch and X-23, aka Laura Kinney, Wolverine's cloned daughter of sorts. Her origin story is an amalgamation of both characters' origins, with the result being a character who has the reality warping abilities of Wanda Maximoff and the adamantium skeleton and claws of Laura Kinney. Essentially, she is Scarlet Witch with a defensive and melee upgrade, mixed with a dose of X-23's inherent trauma from being the literal creation of an experiment. Regardless though, she's pretty kick-ass. In at number 3, Storm Thor, from Earth 904. That rhymes. This alternate version of Thor is one in which Storm becomes the goddess of thunder. This occurred in an issue of Marvel's hypothetical series What If in Volume 2, Issue 12 from 1990, within a story titled What If the X-Men Had Stayed in Asgard. The story follows an instance in which the X-Men and New Mutants found themselves in Asgard, if the title didn't give that away already, with some of the mutants returning to Earth and others staying put. This led to a new age of X-Men on our home planet and a bunch of different X-Men members, the likes of Rogue, Nightcrawler, Mirage, Sunspot, and Cypher adopting an Asgardian way of life. Storm ended up becoming the new god of thunder due to Thor being trapped in the form of a Midgard frog. When Hela and Karnilla conspired to steal Storm's soul, Storm bested them, and Thor was released because of it. Thor renounced the throne, opting to go live on Earth instead, and gave it to Storm, who became the Queen of Asgard, since Odin had died. She also had her own hammer to wield called the Stormbringer. And hey, having a kick-ass version of Storm replace Thor in the Avengers? I mean, count us in, that's pretty cool. Moving on to number 2, Maestro Hulk. Hailing from the dystopian future of Earth 9200, Maestro Hulk is an alternate version of the Hulk who is a horrible tyrant. He first appeared in the 1992 story The Incredible Hulk Future Imperfect issue 1. Now, despite him being literally insane and a complete obsessive sadist, he is a version of the Hulk who is a more experienced and stronger version than the regular 616 Hulk. The 6161 was ultimately able to best Maestro, and thus implying that Maestro's demise was actually the catalyst event that created the Hulk in the first place. There's a whole time displacement thing that happened. That being said, let's play a game of hypotheticals here, as if we weren't already in this list. If Maestro was actually a good guy instead, he would be a massive asset to the Avengers team. He's got all the benefits of being the Hulk, the super strength, speed, stamina, durability, the regenerative healing factor, capable of absorbing and resisting radiation, resistance to mind control, all that fun stuff, while maintaining his genius level intellect in this form. And he's immortal. He's like an upgraded, although still kind of mad version of the Hulk, and hey, that's pretty cool. And last but not least, in our number 1 spot, Soldier Supreme. Soldier Supreme is one of the more recently created alternates on our list. He is an amalgamation of Captain America and Doctor Strange, a product of that Infinity War storyline. Now that storyline involves Gamora using the Infinity Gems to fold reality in half and create something called Warp World. This merged many characters into one, with Steve Rogers and Stephen Strange becoming Steven Rogers. Their origin stories were merged, their powers were merged, and so were their aesthetics. This results in a version of Captain America who can do all of the things that Doctor Strange can do. In other words, Cap got a serious upgrade. Imagine having a Captain America who is basically a Sorcerer Supreme, or I guess Soldier Supreme, on the Avengers. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Number 10, Black Widow. The Avengers in the Ultimate Universe are different from their main continuity counterparts, as while the Avengers in 616 are a team of bona fide heroes brought together by massive and often global threats, the Avengers of Earth 1610 were brought together by Nick Fury and are often a team composed of former villains and kinda anti-heroes, people less marketable generally than 1610's Ultimates, which are like the equivalent to the 616's Avengers. Instead, the Avengers from 1610 end up becoming more comparable to DC's Suicide Squad, a team of reluctant participants who are forced to work together to complete missions for S.H.I.E.L.D. and Nick Fury. Monica Chang, however, was not one of the more criminal-based members of the team, and instead was the new Black Widow. She was given the mantle of Black Widow after the death of Natasha, who it turned out was a traitor to S.H.I.E.L.D., the Ultimates, and the USA. Monica was with the Avengers team from day one, joining them on their first mission to apprehend Steve Rogers, aka Captain America, and locate and put a stop to the Red Skull. Monica doesn't have any superpowers, but is a trained agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. She is a skilled spy, combatant, and is experienced with various types of firearms, though typically is known for wielding 2 pistols. While wearing her Stark suit, she also possessed enhanced strength and speed. However, she was still a normal human, and as such was still able to be killed fairly easily when she went up against the immortal Green Goblin. Poor Monica though, I feel like that whole thing kinda did her dirty because, you know, she actually survived for a long time prior to that. So it was really weird that she was like, I'm gonna go into this fight and I'm gonna be super unprepared. Hey, then you die. That's what happens. Monica should know that. Number 9. The Punisher. The Punisher in the reality of Earth 1610 was a member of both Nick Fury's Howling Commandos, who fought against the makers' Dark Ultimates, and a member of Fury's Avengers. The Punisher's powers are basically the same as his Earth 616 counterpart. In other words, he doesn't really have any superpowers. He's mostly just a man who is really skilled in his use of various firearms. He was a trained police officer with the NYPD, so it was lots of tactical training and experience. The first time he joined the Avengers, it was to protect the Vice President against Ghost Rider, but the spirit of vengeance convinced Frank to stand down, and even assist him in the end, also helping him to escape. The Punisher would also escape S.H.I.E.L.D. custody following the mission, but would later be recruited once more by Fury after he ended up in prison. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, if you want more Ultimate lists, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Also, check out our Ultimate Marvel Universe playlist for more videos like this. Number 8. Red Wasp. Red Wasp initially went by the name of Swarm and was a member of the antagonistic Liberators team. She was believed to have been killed in the fight between the Liberators and the Ultimates by the Wasp, Janet Van Dyne, who became giant and stepped on Swarm. However, Petra Laskov managed to survive, saved by S.H.I.E.L.D. and put into rehabilitation by them. Rehabilitation. She was made to work for them and join up with their Avengers team. They even placed an obedience chip within her to make sure that she followed orders. Rehabilitation. During her time with S.H.I.E.L.D., Petra would take up the mantle Red Wasp. She can shrink herself down to the size of an insect and can control large swarms of insects as well. However, because of her insect-like abilities, she can also be defeated using insect repellent. So, pretty cool powers, but with a pretty big weakness. Number 7. Blade. Blade was recruited to the Avengers by Nick Fury, who promised to deliver him Deacon Frost in exchange for his service. Frost is the man responsible for killing Blade's mother and turning him into the creature that he is, in case you didn't know that. Blade helped to apprehend Tyrone Cash after S.H.I.E.L.D. learned he was responsible for selling off their super soldiers on the black market. Blade incapacitated Cash through hypnosis. Ooh, supernatural powers. However, despite him being part vampire, Blade is not as tough as you'd expect, especially in comparison to the tough version of the character we know from the Earth 616. Iron Man found that out when he basically crushed the poor anti-hero. Blade's time serving as part of the Ultimate Avengers may have also helped to get him on the main continuity Avengers team of Earth 616 in the future. I also gotta say, I really love Blade as an addition to the 616 Avengers. I don't know if everybody else is super enjoying that, but I'm really enjoying that. Are you enjoying that? I hope you are. Number 6. Hawkeye. But wait a minute, isn't Hawkeye a member of the Ultimates? Well, yes, he has been that too, but hey, he can do both. Hawkeye, despite being more of a bona fide hero, still had a pretty shady past, which was what made him a great candidate for the Avengers team. Nick Fury invited him to join originally when they went on the hunt for Red Skull, and Barton agreed. In fact, I believe Hawkeye actually helped to bring this team together as well. The Avengers team for him was like a Black Ops group willing to do the dirty work that the Ultimates couldn't be seen getting involved in. Often this meant the villains they went after usually ended up dead. Such was the case with Red Skull in the end. Hawkeye might just seem like a guy with a bow, and well, he is. But he is really good with that bow. He has enhanced vision, which allows him to see much farther and clearer than your average human, and he is an extremely skilled fighter, pilot, and spy. So, you know. Also, he's deadly with fingernails, so watch yourself if you're just facing him as he is. If he's got fingernails, he's got weapons.
Number 5. Tigra. Greer Nelson was a costumed vigilante named Cat, who was enhanced by a doctor who gave her cat-like powers tied to her costume. She is later mutated into Tigra, a human-tiger hybrid created through a mystical ritual. Her feline physiology grants her a number of superhuman capabilities. In addition to the usual super strength and stuff, she has superhuman senses and a regenerative healing factor. Her teeth and claws are razor sharp and capable of cutting through bone, stone, and even some metals. She wears a cat's head amulet as a talisman for her so she can change back and forth between her feline form. She became a part of the Avengers in issue number 211 and proved herself in battle against the Molecule Man. She eventually moves to San Francisco and becomes friends with Spider-Woman. She also helped out at Avengers Academy after the fall of Norman Osborn. Number 4. Falcon. Also known as Samuel Wilson, Falcon grew up in a tough Harlem neighborhood and his father was killed trying to stop a fight. His mother later died protecting her children from a mugging, and Sam eventually gets involved with the mob at one point, seeming like he would never become a hero. Red Skull uses the Cosmic Cube to give Sam the ability to telepathically speak with birds, especially a falcon that Wilson names Redwing. He is sent to take on Captain America, but Cap frees Wilson from Red Skull's control, and as Falcon, he becomes Cap's partner, and the two work together for a long time. Black Panther also helps out Falcon by helping to create his harness that allows him to fly. He joins the Avengers between issue 184 and 194, but finds out that he's just been drafted to fill a quota, and resentful of being a token, he quits as soon as he can. Number 3. Firebird. First appearing in Incredible Hulk number 265 in 1981, Bonita Juarez was walking across the desert of New Mexico when a huge ball of fire crashed down into the sand just 10 feet from where she stood. Bathed in extraterrestrial radiation, she later discovers she received fire-based superpowers. She believed the fireball was a manifestation of the American Indian legend of the Firebird, and so makes herself a costume and decides to become a hero with the name Firebird. She helped out the West Coast Avengers in a battle against Master Pandemonium, and later was recruited onto the Avengers during a spiritual journey during which she was going by the name La Espirita. She discovers that her powers were actually from an alien child's failed experiment and not an act of God, and after a brief crisis of faith, returns to the name Firebird. Her and the Rangers worked alongside Kane in Scarlet Spider Volume 2, helping him to battle against a monster made of pure energy. Number 2. Stingray. Walter Newell was an oceanographer and engineer supervising the construction of an underwater city. He designed a unique suit for deep sea exploration, basing the design on manta rays and taking up the name Stingray. He was ordered to investigate Namor, but believed him to be innocent and later allows him to escape. In Avengers Volume 3, he was one of the many heroes who responded to the rallying call, but chose not to remain an Avenger full-time. He later becomes a fully active member of the Avengers when Kang the Conqueror begins to strike all around the Earth. He helped to enlist the help of the Atlanteans in the fight on the waterfront, and was a great asset thanks to his nautical experience. He ultimately leaves the Avengers, but remains a reserve member and still responds to emergency calls. Number 1. Demolition Man. Similar to Justice, D-Man was also once a wrestler in the Unlimited Class Wrestling Federation. Born Dennis Dunphy, he was raised in Detroit and idolized superheroes as a boy. A college football player, hoping to one day be drafted, he accepts an offer from the power broker, hoping he'll get the power he needs to become a professional football player. Unfortunately, he winds up too powerful to safely compete with normal athletes, so the power broker sets him up as a wrestler. After Captain America takes an interest in the power broker, Dennis allies with him. Later, he joins the Avengers informally. He designed and built his own costume, based on Wolverine and Daredevil suits, and he nearly dies in a plane crash, joins the US Army, and at one point joins Wonder Man's Revengers, dedicated to dismantling the Avengers. He even becomes bonded with a symbiote at one point, and is later turned into a vampire to save his life after he becomes mortally wounded.
Number 10. Steel Corpse from Age of X. Iron Man is now a household name thanks largely to the MCU and the Iron Man film in 2008 that started it off. Believe it or not, before that he was not that well known in the mainstream. Don't let them rewrite history for you. Comic historians like to do that a lot, so does the media, especially right now. Still, within comics pre-MCU, Iron Man was decently utilized, but it definitely jumped up after that popularity. A lot of that was thanks to horizontal marketing. Anyway, on to Age of X, which came out in 2011. Here you had an intriguing version of Tony Stark who went by the name of Steel Corpse. Why? Because he had ended up becoming permanently bonded to his Iron Man costume, which was also slowly digesting him. Metal indeed. Seeing the irony in becoming a walking corpse, that's how he decided upon his name. Also, his armor could operate without him, like it had its own directives and would just drag him along for the ride. Tony has a bad history with that happening with his armors. His AI is just too good. He's making them too good. Number 9, clue. You ever have words you just can't say? No matter how many times you hear it, people will say it right to you, and 2 seconds later, it's gone, like dust in the wind. This is one of those for me. Same with Kara and Kara. This is a sad Hulk, an alter ego of the Hulk, not Bruce Banner. This character is described as the Hulk of Hulks. Cause paradoxically, sometimes nothing makes you madder than feeling sad. It is said that this is the Hulk's repressed rage that even he has to always keep in check and inside because he knows that it'll be very dangerous. However, during the Axis storyline event, this alter ego broke free. And because Axis was all about heroes having the alternate moralities, well, this character went on a rampage and was more dangerous than the Hulk ever had been. So you know that means they racked up quite the body count because the Hulk has killed hundreds. I don't care what Marvel says. We've seen the towns destroyed. This character has a more streamlined, doomsday-esque design. It's pretty cool. Number 8, Hawkeye from Old Man Logan. Why hello again, Old Man Logan. We meet again. Not for the last time, I'm sure. Hawkeye is a main character for a decent portion of this story. He fulfills the role of cool side character. This Hawkeye is blind but still able to see in a way that is reminiscent of the Daredevil. He also has a ponytail, and you know you feel cool if you're rocking a ponytail. Hawkeye managed to survive all those years in that supervillain controlled America. That is until he teamed up with Wolverine, aka Logan. Don't do it, it's a bad life choice. If you want a cool archery style road trip companion, then Old Man Hawkeye is for you. Number 7, Natasha Stark. Let's go over a blip of an alternate universe. One that is more cool if you are a Stony shipper than anything else. Stony being the pairing of Steve Rogers and Tony Stark. Let me explain. I know some of you are already clicking off, but it's fine because all parts of fandom are valid. This universe is a sweet nod to the boon and transformative fandom that happened after the Civil War comic arc of 2006. This arc dealt with the pro versus anti-registration sides of superheroing. This was after a disastrous superheroing event goes wrong featuring the New Warriors, which leaves many dead, including 60 children. This arc would decimate Tony and Steve's friendship, and before this they had been besties, and so some fans felt that it hadn't been the best executed and they weren't that happy with it. And so these fans took to fandom and fan fiction to create what are called fix-its. They wanted to make the universe like it was again, friends. But for many, this ended up ballooning into a ship, and it became one of the dominant pairings of the fandom until the MCU, and till the end of the line, until not. Nah. With all that established, let's talk about Natasha Stark from Earth 3490. This is a female Tony who averts civil war by marrying Steve. Oh yes, because their feelings tended that way already, and the only difference was that Tony was a woman in this universe. Okay, sure Jan, I see you. Again, this was a blip, but for many shippers a ha, I knew it moment. Whenever a part of your fandom is acknowledged in a fun way, it's always a good day. Fandom positivity is pretty cool. Number 6, Dargo Couture. Do you like Conan? Do you like Commandi? Well then get ready for the Thor of Earth 10280. He is the last champion of Midgard, and he is living the most metal life, fighting Loki, who in this universe is a techno-sorcerer, which, I mean, how cool does that sound? Now he was a character who became Thor by wielding the hammer, which has happened multiple times throughout Thor's history. People become new Thors. Not that I would call myself that if my name was Dargo Couture. Is that a Farscape nod? Probably not, but I like to pretend it is because I make my own fun and connections. This costume is great. The spikes and somehow the extension of the wings on the helmet make them cool. He looks like he's heading a heavy metal band.
Number 5, all new, all different Avengers. This was both its own new team of Avengers in a series, as well as being known as the name for kind of an entire Marvel-verse soft relaunch, including a variety of spin-offs that took place in 2015, known as the all new, all different verse. This relaunch included a variety of series, including one of my faves, All New Wolverine. But for the purpose of this list, we'll be talking about the all new, all different Avengers founding team and the individual comic series itself that was about them. Following Secret Wars, this all new, all different Avengers team was formed. Originally it was comprised of Iron Man, Sam Wilson, who was Captain America at the time, Miss Marvel aka Kamala Khan, Miles Morales as Spider-Man, young Sam Alexander as Nova, Vision, and Jane Foster's Thor. Iron Man would act as their leader, here, but this team wouldn't even officially refer to themselves as Avengers until the very end of issue number 3 of their series. This was a refresh on the Avenger team, one that had no tower, no funding, and wasn't officially even recognized yet. Over time they would become more established, but the all-new, all-different team would only exist as it was for 15 issues, up until the events of Civil War II. Number 4. A-Force. The first all-female team of Avengers. It took us over 50 years, but eventually we got there. This team had 2 self-titled comic series, though sadly both were very short. The team was originally led by She-Hulk, and its members would include Captain Marvel, Medusa, Singularity, Dazzler, and Nico Minoru. A-Force originally took their name from the name for the defenders of the matriarchal nation of Arcadia on Battleworld, where She-Hulk reigned as a baroness. The team was created during the Secret Wars event involving Emperor Doom's Battleworld, and would continue to exist up until the events of Civil War II, when She-Hulk was put into a coma. It's kinda how that whole thing starts. Well, it's part of the start anyways. Number 3. US Avengers. The US Avengers is a strange and eclectic team, but also a fun and patriotic one. They worked alongside S.H.I.E.L.D. but were also considered independent of the organization. This team actually coincided with another Avenger related one that I mentioned earlier, Avengers Idea Mechanics, the new AIM. Sunspot, who was operating under the popular alias of Citizen 5, led and created this team. It was comprised of a quirky yet popular group of heroes, including Robert Maverick's Red Hulk, Cannonball, Tony Ho's Iron Patriot, Squirrel Girl, Pod, and the time-displaced daughter of Luke Cage and Jessica Jones from an alternate future known as Danielle Cage, aka her alternate universe's Captain America. I love Danielle Cage, she's pretty cool. Number 2. Occupy Avengers. I almost said Octopus Avengers, which is not a thing. But maybe it should be a thing, I don't know, they could be a team, they're all octopuses. This series and Avengers spin-off was a small one. It consisted mainly of Hawkeye and followed his adventures on a path for redemption following the events of Civil War II. Let's not forget that it was Hawkeye's arrow that was deemed responsible for the death of Bruce Banner, although Banner had asked that Hawkeye mercy kill him should it be necessary. Although he was acquitted of all murder charges, Hawkeye still felt guilty and sought to make things right. His way of doing this? A more grassroots approach to heroism involving basically a community outreach. Clint focused on more real-world problems that threatened people, like fixing up Santa Rosa, New Mexico's water supply. During the run of Occupy Avengers, Hawkeye would be joined by other heroes such as Red Wolf and Nightshade, who would join him on his quest. Number 1. Savage Avengers. This ruthless team of Avengers is basically one of the newest anti-hero Avenger teams to form, and is more anti-hero than our number 10 spot, the Dark Avengers, because all the members are still definitely the good guys, but are also known for being violent killers as well. This team was formed out of a team-up involving Wolverine and Conan the Barbarian. It consists of Elektra, Dr. Voodoo, formerly known as Brother Voodoo, Elektra, Punisher, and Venom. The team was assembled to combat the combined threat of spellcasters and spell traders from Conan's world and Marvel's main continuity evil secret ninja organization known as The Hand.
Starting us off in at number 10, Super Soldier. We're starting off our list with a number that would be an awesome addition to the Avengers roster, but would feasibly never manage to even be considered for the team in the regular 616 universe. That's because he's an amalgamation of Steve Rogers and Superman. This is Super Soldier, a product of the combined DC Marvel Amalgam universe in which various characters from each publisher were merged together to create new individuals. It's a neat concept, and it gave us a lot of interesting characters. Naturally, it makes sense that Captain America and Superman would make a great match for each other, with the hero gaining his abilities thanks to the Super Soldier formula, which was created thanks to cellular samples from an alien corpse. Little less of an inspiring superhero origin story, isn't it? He can do everything that Cap and Supes can do, so needless to say, that's impressive. But damned if DC would ever let him join a 616 Avengers team. Up next, number 9, Hawkeye 2099. A 2099 version of Hawkeye appeared in Secret Wars, and he's really dope. So 2099 is a Marvel Comics imprint that initially began being published in 1992 as one possible future in the Marvel Universe. It's meant to take place 100 years in the future, and was initially titled Marvel 2093, which clearly was a little less catchy. Anyway, this Hawkeye shows up in Secret Wars 2019 issue 1 from 2015 as part of Alchemex's Avengers team. Named Max, last name never revealed, he differs from the traditional iterations of Hawkeye by having his DNA mixed with a hawk's, which gave him real claws and real wings. In our number 8 spot, we have Natasha Stark. Here we have an alternate version of Iron Man hailing from Earth 3490. and it's a unique one. This Iron Man is actually Iron Woman, born Natasha Stark rather than Tony. She's exactly like Tony in the sense of having the same abilities as the 616 Stark and an almost identical suit of armor, except it's referred to as her Iron Woman armor, of course. Here's where things get really interesting though. Because this alternate version of Stark is a woman, Civil War never happened. Instead, Natasha gets involved with Captain America Steve Rogers, the two marry, and the Civil War event never occurs on Earth 3490. Apparently, they were a deterrent to each other's more aggressive behavior. Natasha first appeared in Dark Reign Fantastic Four issue 2 in 2009 when Reed Richards was in search of alternate realities in which Civil War had ended differently. Moving on to our number 7 spot, we have Ant-Man Wolverine. Yes, this exists. Secret Wars gave us a slew of alternates of various characters, and this includes a version of Ant-Man who is Wolverine. Or rather, a version of Wolverine who operates under the Ant-Man mantle. First appearing in Secret Wars Battle World issue 3, this little Logan has the same powers as those who have operated under the Ant-Man mantle. And tiny claws to boot! How fun. This Ant-Man Wolverine was one of many alternate versions of Wolverine who were brought together in an attempt to fight a pacifist version of Wolverine, aka Monk, by Mojo. Now these other Wolverines involve another alias of Hank Pym's, Giant Man, who, as you guessed it, was a Wolverine who could also grow in size. There was also a cat Wolverine and a dog Wolverine, but kinda less credible than the rest of the other alternate Wolverines, just saying. And at number 6, Janet Van Dyne of Earth 1610. This version of the Wasp is from the alternate universe of Earth 1610. While her fate is a pretty brutal one, and her relationship with Hank Pym is, textbook domestic abuse, she possesses something that Van Dyne of 616 does not, the ability to actually transform into a wasp-human hybrid. Born a mutant, her mutation gave her insect-like traits that also expanded to her behavior. She could lay eggs and eat insects, which yes is kind of gross, but the benefits at least outweigh the downsides. When she would reduce in size via the force of her willpower, she would grow a pair of insect-like wings from her back. She retained her normal strength when reducing in size and could control the exact proportions of that size, although her body contained a natural neurological reflex that prevented her from shrinking below a specific size, so can't get too small. And she also has an ability called bioelectrical blasts, in which she produces energy that she calls her wasp stings. She could use these blasts when at full size, which was essentially the equivalent of being struck by a lightning bolt. Moving on to number 5, A Fresh Start. In 2018, Marvel relaunched their comics with an event called Fresh Start. Now Fresh Start saw the return of fan favorite characters like Tony Stark, Steve Rogers, Thor Odinson, Bruce Banner, and Logan aka Wolverine. Many of these characters post-Civil War II had either died or moved on to something else, with legacy heroes taking their place and picking up their respective mantles. This relaunch also introduced a new incarnation of the West Coast Avengers. While Hawkeye still remained their leader, the second Hawkeye, Kate Bishop, was also on the team, along with Gwenpool, America Chavez, Quentin Quire, and Kate's boyfriend Johnny Watts aka Fuse. Johnny's sister Ramona Watts would also join up with the team during the series' run, and Kate's ex-boyfriend, Novar, popped up as well. And of course, Gwenpool would bring Jeff the baby landshark into the team in issue 8 after he first appeared in issue 7. And oh my god, Jeff the landshark is like one of the greatest things ever. Another really neat aspect about the comic is that its narrative is broken up by reality television style interviews, in which we see the characters divulge to a crew various thoughts, feelings, etc. concerning the missions they go on and their interactions with other team members. It's kind of a neat twist. Moving on to number 4, Representation. The Fresh Start iteration of the West Coast Avengers are a very diverse cast, to say the least. But not just when it comes to the color of their skin. Multiple members identify as part of the queer spectrum, making it one of the biggest LGBTQ titles in Marvel's recent history. Ramon Watts, aka Alloy, is dating America Chavez. And now it seems that they aren't the token queer characters in the series because Ramon's brother, Johnny, who has been dating Kate Bishop, has declared his attraction to Novar, Kate's ex, who also declared a mutual attraction. The final issue of the series contained a few panels of the television crew interviewing Kate Bishop, Novar, and Fuse, in which both Marvel Boy and Johnny reveal that they find the other one hot. Johnny says separately in his interview about Novar, he's pretty hot though, and Novar in his says, well, she's with Johnny and I have to respect that. And I can see what she sees in him. He's hot. And then we get a panel in which Kate is being interviewed right after the crew inform her of what the two of her love interests have said, to which she responds, wait, have I ever even dated anyone straight? To which the crew responds with, nope. Moving on to number 3, US Agent. While the Avengers generally refused to tango with the government, the West Coast Avengers were always open to the outside influence. As time went on, the US government became more involved in the team, to the extent that Hawkeye was actually briefly replaced as their leader by a Steve Rogers carbon copy US agent. Several members of the team quit because of this, and the West Coast Avengers actually gained more enemies due to his involvement. Eventually he was booted out, thankfully, but it did cause quite the stir up for the team at the time. Moving on to number 2, ForceWorks. Remember how we mentioned that Avengers West Coast was cancelled in 1994? Well, this is what was created to replace it. ForceWorks, a ridiculously 90s series that took the remains of the West Coast Avengers team, but was led by Iron Man, who wanted to establish a team that wouldn't only fight crime, but would also prevent disasters from occurring. Tell that to his Civil War self. Scarlet Witch was the leader of the team, which consisted of War Machine, Spider-Woman, Cybermancer, US Agent, Moonraker, and Wonder Man, who was later replaced by Sentry. This team's story arcs would eventually lead into one of the worst Avengers storylines of all time, Avengers The Crossing, in which it was revealed that Tony Stark was actually under the influence of Kang the Conqueror, but then it was revealed to actually be his future self, Immortus, in disguise. And then he was killed off altogether and replaced by a younger version of himself from an alternate reality. This then bled into Heroes Reborn, which was yet another highly disliked story arc. And finally, in at number 1, cancelled again. Clearly, cancellation is nothing new to the West Coast Avengers. The latest iteration of the West Coast Avengers, the Fresh Start Gang, were cancelled after 10 issues, ending with West Coast Avengers issue 10, much to many fans' dismay. But while the series is coming to an end, it seems as if the team will live on, guest starring in another Marvel series, Superior Spider-Man.
Number 10. Justice. Also known as Vance Astrovic, he has latent mutant telekinesis powers that were activated when he encountered his future self, Major Victory of the Guardians of the Galaxy. The Major also traveled back in time and across realities to prevent himself from ever acquiring powers, but instead just activated them early and created an alternate timeline. Man, talk about being your own worst enemy. He accidentally killed his father and went to prison, and during this time learned to respect the law, even helping the guards during an uprising. When he was released, he had a new outlook on life and named himself Justice, becoming a hero. He has been a member of the New Warriors and later the Avengers, discovering a new way to defeat Ultron and helping them defeat him. His main power is his telekinesis, although he was once a fighter in the UCWF, Unlimited Class Wrestling Federation, where he was known as Manglin' John Mahoney. Hey guys, if you like these videos and you want to see more, be sure to take a second and hit that like button. Number 9. Black Knight. Dane Whitman is actually the third character to bear the Black Knight name, and he first appeared in the Avengers number 47 in 1967. Nephew to the original Black Knight, he inherited a mystical sword that carried a curse and fought to restore honor to the Black Knight name. He uses a winged horse named Aragorn as his mount, and as an Avenger, helped the team take on Kang the Conqueror. An excellent swordsman with magic senses, he has been a member of many other teams, including the Heroes for Hire and the Ultra Force. He had a 4-issue miniseries in 1990 and was the main character of his own series that was cancelled after a short time. If Black Knight is an Avenger that you have heard of, then good news for you, he'll be appearing in the upcoming Marvel film Eternals in 2021, played by Kit Harington. If you've seen Game of Thrones, then I'm sure you'll agree he's a great choice. Can't wait to see Jon Snow in the MCU. Number 8. Two Gun Kid. In 1948, Marvel released their first ever Western comic book, Two Gun Kid. An expert gunslinger wrongly accused of murder, he spends his life on the run, but does good everywhere he goes. Just him, his 2 6 guns, and his trusty guitar. Marvel had great success with this and went on to create a whole slew of Western themed comics, but I'll bet the kid never thought he would one day be riding alongside men in tights as a member of the Avengers. The kid met the Avengers when they went up against the time-traveling villain Kang in 1870 and got along really well with Hawkeye, so he just joins up and helps them take on Kang. Afterwards, he returns to the 20th century with the Avengers. In the modern era, he works alongside She-Hulk, hoping to become her colleague since she works at a law firm, but quickly realizes he'll never be able to catch up on all the new laws and instead becomes a bounty hunter. He rides around in an awesome jet cycle named Lightning, which he uses to fly around the city. Number 7. Hellcat. Real name Patricia Walker. You might recognize her from Marvel's Netflix shows where she's guest starred, but did you know she was also once an Avenger? Hellcat joined up with the Avengers in 1976, but actually had her own teen romantic comedy series before this called Miss America Magazine in 1944. Similar to Two Gun Kid, This is a popular character that sort of slowly evolved into a superhero. She appears again in 1977 in The Defenders, where she meets the son of Satan, and the two later become married, a husband and wife occult investigation team. She is a well-trained martial artist and gymnast, with wrist-mounted claws and grappling hooks. Surprisingly, she has appeared in 5 different Marvel video games, including LEGO Avengers. Number 6. Moondragon. Heather Douglas was a young girl driving through the desert with her parents when Thanos' spaceship landed on Earth. Not wanting witnesses, he blew up their car, but Heather was thrown from the vehicle and survived. Her father's corpse is later reanimated to create Drax the Destroyer. Thanos' father, Mentor, found her and took her to his homeworld Titan, where she studied the Titan's ways and unlocked her latent psychic potential. However, she becomes influenced by the Dragon of the Moon, and believing she has successfully resisted its influence, takes on the name Moondragon. She was present when the Avengers confronted Korvac, using her powers to see into his mind while they fought. She later joins the Defenders alongside Valkyrie, and discovers she's still being influenced by the Dragon of the Moon. She manages to resist it for real this time, but as they are separated, she begins to die from mutated spores, and the dragon appears again, offering to save her life if she agrees to be its host. She does agree, and then, as an evil dragon, fights against the Defenders until the 4 of them sacrifice themselves to kill both her and the dragon.
Number 5. War Machine. War Machine is James Rhodes, who became a close friend to Iron Man and ended up being gifted a suit of armor from Tony to use in his own heroic adventures. He would end up being recruited and serve on the revived Avengers project as a member of the team during their first mission, where they attempted to defeat and capture Red Skull. Rhodey happened to be armed with a nuke to use against the Red Skull as part of a last resort plan, if needed, but the Red Skull had overheard about this plan and said nuke, and so managed to disable it easily using the Cosmic Cube. Honestly, if the Red Skull didn't have the Cosmic Cube though at this time, my money would have definitely been on War Machine in this fight, because War Machine I think is pretty powerful. War Machine would also for a time gain temporary Hulk-like powers after being given some of Tyrone Cash's Hulk serum. Number 4. Nerd Hulk. While Nerd Hulk is a very powerful character in terms of his abilities being on the same level of power as Bruce Banner's Hulk from Earth 1610, he tends to end up being not so powerful in actuality when battling other people. This is because he has a tendency to hold back though. Nerd Hulk is a clone that Gregory Stark, Tony Stark's brother, created. Nerd Hulk prefers to try and resolve conflicts using logic as opposed to violence, and it is the marriage of his intellect and strength combined that holds him back from being as deadly as he could be. Still, the potential is there, and he does have access to the same amount of strength and ferocity as Banner if he'd only feel inclined to use it. Nerd Hulk was a member of the Avengers team when they were first resurrected and went after Red Skull. He would also later attempt to join the Ultimates, but he was denied membership. Sad. Poor Nerd Hulk. I love him with his little glasses. Number 3. Gregory Stark. Gregory Stark is like the evil brother of Tony Stark. He is the more immoral of the two when it comes to technology, but is more put together overall in comparison to his brother. Much less of a mess, if you will. This obviously made him a valuable asset to S.H.I.E.L.D. and Nick Fury, and so he ended up on the Avengers team. However, Gregory was also super smart, and was using his time working with S.H.I.E.L.D. to put certain plans into action that would allow him to take over control and eventually kind of rule the world, sort of. After Fury seemingly went rogue and Carol Danvers was also removed from the chessboard, Gregory was made the new director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and attempted to use his influence and nanite tech to cause chaos and war to erupt in other nations. Fortunately, he would be defeated by his brother Tony, who disabled his nanites with an EMP, allowing Thor to take him down. Still, for a time, Gregory was a pretty valuable member of the Avengers team, and later a formidable villain to them and to the Ultimates. And for that, he gets some bonus points. That's what I say. Gold Star Gregory Stark. That's what I call him. For evilness, I guess. Number 2. Tyrone Cash. Tyrone Cash was a fairly powerful version of the Hulk, and actually was the first Hulk to exist in the Ultimate Universe. He created the Hulk serum before his protege Bruce Banner was able to, and decided to use it on himself. This gave him massive strength, and he took the name Tyrone Cash, and decided to become a criminal, using his brilliant intellect to avoid capture for longer than a decade. Previously, he'd been known as the Scientist and as Banner's mentor, Professor Leonard Williams. Eventually, Cash was apprehended and forced to join the Avengers team, and after S.H.I.E.L.D. learned that he'd betrayed them, Fury had him executed. So of course, who's the most powerful? Who could it be? Number 1. Nick Fury. When it comes to the Avengers team, Nick Fury is like the Amanda Waller of it all, in comparison to the Ultimate Avengers DC counterpart, which would likely be the Suicide Squad. Nick Fury was the one to resurrect Project Avengers, and while he claimed this was done to hunt down the Red Skull, Captain America's villainous son in this reality, it is actually believed that Fury had orchestrated Red Skull's return in order to get his job back as director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and resurrect the old abandoned Avengers project. That's just so Nick Fury, I'm just saying. Nick Fury holds a lot of power, not just as a master spy who often deals in secrets, but also because he was exposed to the super soldier serum and has influence over the rest of the Avengers team as their overall leader and organizer. He's just got a lot of power. He's also like got a million plans, so if you're like, oh, I know how we'll beat Nick Fury, he probably already has a plan for if you try to do that to him. That's how good he is. Number 10. Dark Avengers. The Dark Avengers were first introduced in their own comic book series in Dark Avengers issue number 1. Not everyone is a fan of them, because while they're kind of Avengers, they're also kind of go against a lot of the things that the original team stood for. The Dark Avengers are led by Norman Osborn, who gets to make his own organization, Hammer, to safeguard the world's safety following the crumbling of S.H.I.E.L.D. and after his victory against the Skrull Queen, whose death was brought about by Osborn and was also televised, making him a worldwide hero in the eyes of many, despite the fact that, yeah, he was still definitely a villain. Still, although this team was comprised of villains, they did aim to do good things, just in their own way. In truth, they became more a team of anti-heroes than anything, with just a dash of villainous escapades organized by their leader, Osborn, who at this point went by Iron Patriot. Sort of like the Iron Man of this Dark Avengers crew. Number 9. Avengers Academy. Avengers Academy was a series that replaced the Avengers The Initiative series. As that series ended, this one began. The Avengers Academy team was a group of superpowered youths who were selected to be trained as new Avengers. Although originally the teens thought that they had been selected due to the promise that they showed, it was later revealed that they had been selected because of the great risk that they would ultimately become villains. In fact, 6 of the teens were actually working for Norman Osborn during the Dark Avengers Hammer Dark Reign days, and likely could have ended up being trained by him to become Dark Avengers, should that whole situation have continued to play out. However, when the Avengers found out about them, they instead decided to create the Avengers Academy in an attempt to repurpose and redeem those youths, so basically took them in themselves. Hank Pym acted as the headmaster of this academy, while Tigra, Justice, Quicksilver, and Speedball took on roles as teachers. Number 8. Secret Avengers. This team operated for 3 years in the comics. It was led by Commander Steve Rogers and Sharon Carter. After the dissolution of Hammer and the Dark Avengers, Steve was now left to decide what should come after. Instead of reforming S.H.I.E.L.D. or the Avengers, he decided to secure global safety through the use of various smaller Avengers teams. Secret Avengers was one of those teams that he himself led, and was a black ops unit used for covertly dealing with the problems that Osborn, Hammer, and the Dark Avengers had left behind and created during their reign. Members included Black Widow, Ant-Man, Beast, Moon Knight, War Machine, Nova, and a Valkyrie named Brunhilde. They were eventually disbanded by Hawkeye following their fight against the Descendants. But man, was it a fun and weird run. Seriously, if you haven't checked out Secret Avengers, you should maybe do it. It's pretty strange. I kinda love it. Number 7. Mighty Avengers. Granted, there is more than one Mighty Avengers team, but for the purpose of this list, we're talking about Luke Cage's Mighty Avengers. This team of Avengers formed to look after the Earth after the main Avengers team was forced to roll out when the Builders threatened the entire universe. Yeah, That was a thing, remember that? During the Avengers' absence, Thanos returned to Earth and the mighty Avengers stepped in to protect their people and their planet. The team was led by Luke Cage and included such heroes as Spectrum, White Tiger, and Blue Marvel, as well as Superior Spider-Man, who at one point attempted to overtake leadership of the team, fighting Luke Cage for it. Number 6. AIM. I know what you're thinking, AIM? Wait, but what? AIM was originally the villainous organization of genius-level scientists, also known as Advanced Idea Mechanics, who aimed, get it, aimed, to overthrow the government and rule the world using technological advancements. So what are you talking about, Amanda? How can they be an Avengers team? Well, this organization eventually was taken over by mutant and hero Sunspot, Roberto da Costa. Sunspot renamed the organization Avengers Idea Mechanics and set out to reclaim and reform it. He used the organization for good, filling it with more noble, brilliant minds who developed tech to help with Sunspot's new Avengers rescue missions. Roberto basically merged his new Avengers team with AIM to create this new technologically advanced Avengers team. Previously, that new Avengers team was actually known as the Multiversal Avengers, and originally they were all about discovering the reason behind the gradual disintegration of the multiverse.
Number 5. Zombie Avengers. In Avengers Age of Ultron, published in 2015, we are introduced to a Marvel universe based off of the popular cinematic universe that features everyone's favorite heroes. In this universe, after the Chitauri invasion of New York City, a zombie shows up at Tony Stark's birthday party. The zombie is killed by Black Widow, but not before its infection is spread through touch to Thor and Black Widow. The Avengers attempt to keep the zombified heroes contained, while Tony and Bruce Banner head out in search of a cure. Thor escapes, and he goes after some of the other Avengers, and this leads into the storyline called Zombies Assemble, published in 2007, originally a manga but then later adapted into English for the Western audience. Number 4. Defunct Avengers. Next Avengers, Heroes of Tomorrow, came out in 2008, and in it everything starts out great. Our heroes have defeated all of their foes and they all have normal lives, starting families and having children. But when Ultron shows up, our heroes race to hide and protect their children, which they succeed at but then end up dying themselves. Except for Thor, who returns to rule Asgard after his father's death. It's a long road as Iron Man and Vision work together to seek out the children of the Avengers and raise a new generation of Avengers, eventually defeating Ultron with some help from the Incredible Hulk. Number 3. Hulk Avengers. In Longshot Saves the Marvel Universe, we see some crazy variations of Marvel characters. This series, published in 2014, features a team known as the Hulk Avengers, made up of Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, and Hawkeye. It's worth noting that these guys are antagonists in the story, along with Wilson Fisk wielding the Infinity Gauntlet, Vampire King Wolverine, and a Venom version of the Punisher. We also see Otto Octavius trapped in Spider-Man's body, and a version of Kraven the Hunter hosting the Phoenix Force. It's a dark and twisted take on everyone, and you can tell that the creators had a lot of fun making it. Did I mention there's a werewolf Captain America? Number 2. Tyrant Avengers. This version of the Avengers appeared in Avengers Volume 5 in 2014. Their reality was destroyed and they were brought to the Marvel Prime universe by Advanced Idea Mechanics. They escape from AIM Island and arrive in New York, realizing that they're actually in an alternate universe. Thor notices some humans nearby not on their knees as they should be and decides to kill them and teach them a lesson. Eventually, these guys end up squaring off against the real Avengers in an epic showdown. In the end, AIM stealthily captures both teams and these bad guys get sent off to their own world, Earth 83292. Maybe we'll check in with them in a future Marvel story. And now, number 1, Revengers. In Realm of Kings number 1, released in 2009, we meet the Revengers, Avengers of the Cancerverse, corrupted by Lord Marvel. The Cancerverse is a reality where life defeated death, resulting in eternal life. But not the good kind. The entire universe is a living corpse kind. In this story, a Terrigen bomb is launched by the Inhumans of Earth 616 and creates an opening between Earth and the Cancerverse. Lord Marvel leads an invasion hoping to expand the Cancerverse. The Revengers are super dark and scary, and most notably we see Bruce Banner sporting some huge horns, Carol Danvers with a creepy third eye, and Captain America with stars that look suspiciously like pentagrams. You would be hard-pressed to find a darker version of Earth's mightiest heroes.
And at number 10, The Founders. The West Coast Avengers debuted in their own self-titled comic, but the initiative to create a team located on the other side of the country was spearheaded in the Avengers, from a member of the team who wasn't even a part of the initial lineup, Vision. The android came up with the idea after the Avengers found themselves preoccupied and overwhelmed by the events of Secret Wars, with most of their heavy hitters tied up in other matters. Now Vision stayed with the Avengers on the East Coast, and Hawkeye was named the chair of the WCA, and became a founding member, which led the team in over 102 issues. Up next, number 9, past members. So aside from Hawkeye, who else has been on the team? The founding members were Hawkeye, Mockingbird, War Machine, who everyone initially thought was Iron Man, funny enough, Wonder Man, and Tigra. Now from there, Hawkeye recruited many other additional characters over the years, including Scarlet Witch, Iron Man, the real one this time, The Thing, Hank Pym, specifically as a scientific consultant, Moon Knight, Firebird, the Wasp, and of course, Vision, with that group of heroes popping up in the second volume of the series at varying points in time. Human Torch, Quicksilver, Machine Man, Living Lightning, Spider-Woman, and Darkhawk would all have stints with the team too, primarily after 1989. A whole other team of WCA members would pop up during the Fresh Start initiative at Marvel, but we'll get to them a bit later on. And at number 8, the name change. The West Coast Avengers haven't always been referred to as such. Now back in 1984, when the team was introduced, there was a bit of a backlash amongst fans concerning a second Avengers team. It seemed kinda gimmicky. Oh, if those fans could see contemporary comics now. Now after several years leading into the 1990s, the WCA weren't the only Avengers team kicking around. So to ensure that fans and readers would not get confused, Marvel decided that the best thing to do was to change all of their Avengers titles, so that they could be found alphabetically next to each other at comic book stores. In other words, the team names were altered so that the word Avengers was the first word in their title. Now the West Coast Avengers were changed to the Avengers West Coast, a title which was eventually cancelled in 1994. And at number 7, the suicide attempt. The West Coast Avengers history is filled with a whole lot of interpersonal drama, just like the Avengers is. Perhaps one of the most intense story arcs though to have appeared in the West Coast Avengers is when Hank Pym joined the team as a scientific consultant, after his mental health took a turn for the worse when he was a part of the Avengers. Now between issues 17 and 24 of the West Coast Avengers Volume 1, Hank is suicidal, and actually writes suicide letters, including ones to Tony and Tigra. Meanwhile, while Hank is having a personal crisis, the WCA are off fighting desert-inspired supervillains that are wacky as hell. Overall, that story arc just had a lot of strange things going on. Not that suicide is strange, but everything else surrounding the West Coast Avengers at the time was pretty whack. Hank, back at the base, talks to his ex-wife Janet, aka the Wasp, who had divorced him after the infamous wife-beating incident, and essentially says goodbye to her, giving her some really bad vibes about what's going on with him. Then Hank gets a gun, puts it to his head, but before he can shoot, he's interrupted by Firebird, who talks to him into appreciating his God-given gifts. He then gets a little manic, and goes through a strange confidence boost calling himself Dr. Pym as his superhero alias, and then freaks out momentarily when he thinks Firebird is a nun. She reassures him that she isn't, and then they make out. Overall, not the best way to approach mental health issues, as we're very much aware. He challenges Moon Knight to a fight, then chickens out, and then goes off to help save the WCA, who are trapped in the past. It's a whole roller coaster of emotion for Hank. And at number 6, Ultimate Marvel. Of course the West Coast Avengers have an alternate version of themselves. This specific alternate can be found in the Ultimates Marvel Universe. They are a secret team created by S.H.I.E.L.D. called the West Coast Ultimates that consisted of Vision, Quake, Wonder Man, Black Knight, and Tigra. And they've been through some pretty wild stuff. For starters, they were sent out to find Osama bin Laden, but failed when Wonder Man hulked out, and then the team had to fight him to settle him down. Now seeing this, Nick Fury decided that it would be best to put them all in stasis tubes, holding them until they were needed. Flash forward to the United We Stand storyline, in which the Children of Tomorrow, aka Reed Richards' fanatical cult, kills the US president and both houses of Congress, igniting a civil war. The state of California wanted to break apart and become its own country, but Steve Rogers, who had been elected president, denied them of it. So the state's governor decided to take the group out of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s custody and unleash them against the Ultimates, Earth 1610's version of the Avengers.
Number 5. Miss America. Raised in a dimension outside of time and space known as the Utopian Parallel, America Chavez is one of Marvel's newer teen heroes, and she is a powerhouse to say the least. She's been a member of multiple super teams, including the Young Avengers, A-Force, the West Coast Avengers, and the Ultimates, and belongs to the younger generation of heroes who will potentially be the stars of Marvel stories in the future. Chavez gained her powers as a young girl from a magical entity that resided where she lived, and these powers are superhuman strength and speed, star portal creation which allows her to travel the multiverse, and of course, hypercosmic awareness alongside a number of other powers and abilities. When her dimension was threatened by black holes, her mother sacrificed themselves herself to save it, and Chavez ran away from home to travel across dimensions. This began her journey both literally and emotionally from girl to superhero. Since her introduction, America has taken part in many huge plot points, one of the biggest being her role in Civil War II. Now, I won't spoil too much of it for you because it absolutely deserves a read, but let's just say she was smart enough to outsmart Captain Marvel and Spectrum. Appearing for the first time in 2011's Avengers #1, why not check her out for yourself? Number 4. Captain Universe. Tamara DeVoe, aka Captain Universe, was once a woman who suffered from some pretty bad amnesia after a car crash. Although that's not the greatest outcome, she was also imbued with the power of the Enigma Force in the aftermath, so I guess that's somewhat of a bright side. Now, what's the Enigma Force? Well, it is a mystical energy that passes through the microverse in order to protect and preserve the microverse. The wielders of this force are imbued with the Unipower, a facet of the Enigma Force that gives the wielder some pretty sweet powers. In Tamara's case, she was given the ability to manipulate matter and energy, and can also use Univision, which allows her to sense things on a subatomic level or at great distances, or she can use it to literally force someone to tell the truth. Her first mission with the Avengers was actually on Mars to stop the powerful beings Ex Nihilo, Abyss, and Aleph from terraforming the Earth in their image. When Tamara approached them, both Nihilo and Abyss recognized her as their literal goddess and the physical manifestation of the universe itself, so they immediately submitted and just agreed to her terms. However, Aleph did not and just straight up attacked her. Captain Universe easily burned the robot to ashes with a single touch, and the Avengers returned to Earth after a very easy job well done. That wasn't her only mission with the team though, but I will let you check that one out for yourself. Give her story a read starting with 2013's Avengers Volume 5, Number 1. Number 3. Ares. Inspired by a Greek god of the same name, Ares was initially introduced as an antagonist to Thor. However, in 2006, Ares became more of an anti-hero, which inevitably led to him joining forces with the Avengers. Thanks to his Olympian physiology, Ares possesses superhuman strength, speed, stamina, durability, and agility, and is a true immortal, meaning that he can't die by any conventional means. Not only that, Ares has the ability to manipulate war, strife, combat, and all forms of conflict, including mental, physical, spiritual, and conceptual ones, regardless of the area and numbers involved, meaning he can control how they progress. Immediately following the superhero civil war over its legislation, Iron Man and Ms. Marvel traveled to Ares' construction site to recruit him for their new Avengers team. Agreeing that the heroes had ruined his civilian cover, Ares eventually agreed to join the team after Iron Man threatened to deport him to Olympus if he didn't register with the US government and promised a salary similar to that of his construction job. He played a pivotal role in Ultron's defeat and was also largely responsible for bringing down Norman Osborn's Stark Avengers. That victory was sadly bittersweet though, because it led to his death as he was just straight up ripped completely in half. Don't worry though, like I said, he is a god, so he was resurrected not too long after. Check out his entire story for yourself, starting with his first appearance all the way back in the Golden Age in 1942's Comedy Comics Number 10. Number 2. Gilgamesh. Often referred to as the Forgotten One, Gilgamesh's heroic exploits have become so legendary over the millennia that he's often referred to as heroes of myth like Hercules and of course Gilgamesh, which kind of explains his name and why he goes by Gilgamesh. He is one of, if not the strongest member of the hidden group of superpowered beings known as the Eternals, an ancient race of genetically altered humans created by the Celestials. Alongside his teammates, he helps shield humanity from the vicious deviants, though Gilgamesh seems to have a very soft spot for protecting the people of Earth. He joined the Avengers in a time where their membership was at an all-time low, and although his time with them was pretty short, he was an absolutely vital member of the team. While all Eternals were born with an inherent set of superhuman abilities including super strength, Gilgamesh's strength far exceeds that of any of his counterparts, making him one of the most physically powerful characters in all of Marvel, with strength comparable to that of Hercules, Thor, and any other godlike being. As a result of countless millennia of training, Gilgamesh is also an extremely skilled hand-to-hand combatant, which coupled with his imperviousness to damage makes him one of Marvel's most dangerous characters. As is the case with most Eternals, Gilgamesh can also emit deadly beams of light, heat, and physical force from his hands and eyes, and can manipulate matter to a limited degree. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with 1977's Eternals, Number 13. Number 1. Blue Marvel. Adam Brashear, aka Blue Marvel, was known as a child prodigy from an early age and has PhDs in electrical engineering and theoretical physics. After serving his time in the Korean War, Adam joined and led a project attempting to harness antimatter by creating a negative reactor, but unfortunately there was an unexpected explosion and both he and his partner Connor Sims were exposed to the radiation. Now Sims wasn't too lucky and his whole body just disassembled, but Adam was able to become a stable antimatter reactor and develop some pretty sweet powers. As Blue Marvel, he possesses super strength that rivals both the Hulk and Thor, can manipulate antimatter into energy blast, can fly, is pretty much invulnerable, and is also pretty much immortal as he ages much slower than the normal human, making him a serious force to be reckoned with. As a part of the Mighty Avengers, both the 1970s and the one led by Luke Cage and the Ultimates, suit. We have seen Blue Marvel go up against the likes of the Deathwalkers, King Hyperion, and one time he even flew straight through Shumagorath's head because why not, right? Not only that, he has been seen able to withstand the blast of a hydrogen bomb and can even go toe-to-toe with Captain Marvel and come out relatively unscathed. So yeah, he deserves the top spot today. Check him out for yourself, starting with 2009's Adam, Legend of the Blue Marvel, number 1.